All right, go ahead whenever you're ready. Thank you for reading.
Yeah, no problem. All right, well, we're gonna go ahead and get started here with using assistive technology to increase student success and independence in an online learning environment. Before we even start with introductions, the first thing that we kind of wanted to give a sample of is a practice quiz through D2L. You should have been added to a course yesterday, which is titled TeachECC Accessibility Workshop 2024. In that course, the first announcement will sort of direct you to where the quiz is. That first quiz is the practice quiz is that first piece under the content tab. If you don't have a device to be able to do this right now, it's not the end of the world. We'll reference some of those examples here in a little bit. While you guys are taking that quiz, we're gonna go ahead and get started with just some introductions. So as you're doing your quiz, we'll kind of be explaining who we are up here. So.
I'm Jess. I am a human services generalist student and a future intern of the Disability Services Office.
Hi, I am Jack McGraw, a student in the Human Services Substance Abuse Counseling Program and the Vice President of Human Services, Club at TeachECC. I have a physical disability, cerebral palsy, which makes it difficult to walk, talk, and do many physical tasks independently. So I have this communication device that I operate with my eyes. It has a camera on the bottom of the device which tracks a person's eyes. Without this device, I probably would not be as successful in college as I am now. I actually got my bachelor's degree in psychology from Benedictine University last spring. I was at UCC from 2017 to 2019 to get most of my general education classes done. And I am here now because I want to be certified in substance abuse counseling. In a little bit, I will show you how I use D2L on my communication device, which is also a full-fledged computer. I have had a lot of success using D2L on my device.
Okay, you're done.
I'm Katrina Probst. I'm the Director of ADA and Student Access and Disability Services. Another member of our team is Chiquita Hallam. She's our accessibility specialist / student success coach. And unfortunately, she wasn't able to make it here today, but she was integral in our preparation for this workshop.
Hi, I'm Ryan Carr. I am an instructional technology and accessibility coordinator with the Distance Learning Department.
And I'm Kyle Allman. I am the other instructional technology and accessibility coordinator, also with distance learning. So now that we've kind of gone through some introductions, you've had some time. If you haven't finished the quiz, again, not the end of the world if you haven't finished it. You don't have to answer these questions for us right now, but just sort of rhetorical questions to reflect on as you were taking that quiz. There are sort of three sections or three different question types that you probably came across. One thing to think about is any frustrations that you have encountered. It might have been the timer that was ticking up in the top corner or some of the question types that you came across. The other thing is, as you're taking that quiz, I know it was a bit of a crude example with the content, and the content isn't the main piece here, but think about if that would accurately assess your understanding, or if the way that you were answering some of those questions was maybe getting in the way of being able to accurately show what you know. So with that, what we're going to talk about today kind of ties into all of those things, both with assistive technologies as well as the D2L piece and how those two things mesh together. So I'm going to turn it over to Katrina.
Thanks, Kyle. So what is assistive technology? Assistive technology is any piece of equipment, software, program, or product that is used to increase independence and equal access. So it could be equal access in the community, in the workplace, of course, in the educational setting. And it allows someone to access their phone, their computer, and many other different devices. So do you use assistive technology? So who talks into your phone? Does anybody talk into your phone to dictate text messages? Who uses Siri or Alexa? Who talks into the remote control on your TV? Turn to a specific channel, watch the Super Bowl. Who uses the audio reminders when using GPS? Who uses audiobooks? It's convenient when you're traveling, you're commuting. So who uses assistive technology? Everyone. So here's a picture of sliding doors. We all use this. This is a classic example of an accessible design feature in the environment. When you are shopping and you've got your shopping cart, you've got a baby stroller, you use a walker, you use a wheelchair, or your hands are full, you've got your grocery bag, and you don't want to be trying to open up that door at the same time that you are navigating through those doors with your shopping bags. That's an accessible feature in our environment that helps everyone. So that is the goal of our presentation today, to show that these assistive technology devices that we all use can be compatible with content in D2L. So I'm going to be showing a couple of different slides of different examples of assistive technology on the computer. So one is a screen reading software, which is used by individuals who are blind, and it reads everything on the computer. So for an example of how JAWS or another screen reading software is reading content on the computer, you can check out the resources tab in the D2L course, and you can watch some really informative videos. The next device is a refreshable Braille display device, and that is a specific device that's connected to a computer or a laptop, and the individual who's blind who knows Braille can feel the Braille of all the content that's being displayed on the computer. The next slide is showing screen magnification software, so that's used by individuals who have low vision. You can enlarge the text on the screen. You can change contrast colors. So some people like white letters on a black background, and some people like black letters on a white background, and other different color contrast variations. I mean, who changes the color contrast on your phone? Some people like having that nighttime contrast where you have the white letters with the black background on your phone. So we're all using different assistive technology tools. Speech to text. So that's something that Jess is going to be demonstrating to us, her Dragon Naturally Speaking speech recognition software. So an individual talks into the computer, and then the computer is typing what that person said. There's text to speech. So if you're familiar with D2L, you've seen that listen button in D2L that allows you to listen to the content, as long as the content is accessible. The next slide is showing different alternative input devices. So Jack will be demonstrating how he uses his eye tracking software to access the computer. But there are other devices depending on the person's needs. The picture on the top is showing an individual who has a pointer attached to his head, and he's using that pointer to touch buttons on his iPad. There's a single switch device. An individual can press the red button next to the laptop, and it can control things on the computer. So just various different assistive technology devices. This isn't a comprehensive list, but just a sample of different assistive technology. So next we're going to be watching a demo video that Jack made for us, demonstrating how he uses his eye tracking software on D2L for that big quiz that you all took.
Here is me taking a quiz on D2L.
Jack taking an exam using eye tracking software. So we're going to start the quiz.
Thank you. So Jack is clicking on the Start Quiz button in D2L. And the quiz is loading. And the quiz has displayed on the screen.
Selecting a multiple choice question.
So Jack's pointer is going from the question to the answer options. And now he's scrolling down to the next question.
And now we'll move on to question 2. To show an example of a short answer question.
So he clicked on the external link within the question and it opened up a new website, which has a drag and drop question.
The source material here.
Jack has returned to the D2L quiz.
And the question 2.
And he is typing a response in the text box.
And then the last question here, we're showing an example of using a drag and drop question.
So we click on a drop-down menu for one of the matching answers.
And you can see how Jack has to scroll up to our color wheel and then back down. And the left is aligned with the right options. So we have to continue to scroll down to access the options.
So next, Jack is going to talk about barriers that he experiences.
Multiple choice and short answer questions are the easiest types of questions for me to answer. However, when questions have a small diagram like in this quiz, it can be hard for me to see. For questions with drag and drop answers, I cannot be using eye gaze. That is why this quiz has a question with drop-down menus having answers.
So next, we're going to turn it over to Jess, who will be demonstrating how she uses assistive technology on D2L.
I'm joined today by Jeff Eisner, who will be showing how to use assistive technology on the computer. Thank you for joining us today, Jeff.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Can you show us how you read a PDF and answer questions using your assistive technology on D2L?
Sure, I will show you.
Jess is in her homepage on D2L, and she will navigate to the Content tab. Next, she'll navigate to Module 1 and click on the PDF article entitled HS versus College Differences in Accom and Disability Laws and Questions. The PDF opens up, and Jess will scroll down until she gets to the button for Open with Doc Reader. Jess clicked on the Open with Doc Reader button and it's loading. Next, Jess clicks on the Listen button.
Could not find the text to read.
That must have been very frustrating. You couldn't listen to the text. Next, Jess will scroll down to page 3 to answer the reading comprehension questions. Just clicking on the blank space underneath the question to try to type in her response. However, nothing happened. Just tell us about your experience with navigating this document.
Well, I can't do this assignment because I'm unable to have the text being read to me, which is something that I need in order to read the document. And I'm unable to use my speech to text software known as Jack and Actually Speaking to type in my answers to these questions. So I'm unable to do this assignment and it's very frustrating.
Yes, I can definitely imagine how frustrating this is for you. Let's find a way that will work better for you. Jess has returned to the Content tab within D2L and is navigating to Module 2. Jess, if you click on the web page for the University of Maine Accessibility Services, it has the same information as the PDF. Does the web page work better for you?
Let me see.
Jess clicked on the web page and it has loaded. Now Jess is going to click on the listen button.
Differences between high school and college. Understanding the difference between K-12 school experience and college experience, especially regarding.
That's great that you are able to listen to the text being read aloud in the web page.
Yes, it works.
Next, Jess is going to return to the Content tab to navigate to the reading comprehension questions, which is within a quiz on D2L. And Jess will click on the listen button.
Describe the differences between the accommodations in high school and college.
Next, Jess will compose her response to that question. Jess is clicking on the button for Drag and Actually Speaking.
Accommodations in high school guarantee success. Period. While accommodations in college guarantee equal access. Scratch that. While accommodations in college guarantee equal access. Period.
Jess will click on the listen button for question number 2.
What are the laws associated with disability services in high school and college?
And Jess will compose her response to that question.
The laws associated with disability services in high school are IDEA, and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. Period. The laws associated with disability services in college are ADA and the Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. Period. Go to sleep.
That is wonderful that you were able to use both the listen button in the quiz and Drag and Naturally Speaking to answer the questions for this quiz.
Yes, this was definitely easier.
So Jess, if you'd like to explain a little bit about Drag and Naturally Speaking and the barriers that you experience.
So, sure. So as you saw in the video, Drag and Naturally Speaking is my speech to text software and I talk to the computer to type my answers. But as you saw, all the commands I did, like for period or to turn it on, are kind of voice activated. And as you could see, like, even though that was better, it takes longer to type some answers because I had to fix some errors, or like, it doesn't all like just type it nicely on the first go. As you also saw, I also experienced a barrier between the PDF and the doc reader because it didn't read the PDF. And then I also couldn't answer my questions using Dragon Naturally Speaking with that PDF. When it comes to quizzes, I have a hard time with matching questions. As you saw from that sample quiz, if it's like a long list of those matching answers, that takes a really long time, and especially if they're not lined up, it's hard for my eyes to gauge like where I should put those answers. Also, drag and drop is hard for me because it consumes a lot of time for me. If I have to label a diagram, like with a picture of a diagram and like an arrow pointing to it, it's hard for me to like sometimes see where it's pointing to, because as you saw on the quiz, the picture was kind of blurry, or you didn't know what it was kind of talking about. And then also it's hard for me in quizzes to jump between like different types of questions. So like between a short answer and a multiple choice. So it's better for me if they're all kept in like the same area. So all the like short answers are kept together, all the multiple choices are kept together. And if there's matching, all the matching is kind of kept together.
Well, thank you, Jack and Jess.
All right, so Jack and Jess, thank you. Jack and Jess both want to do the assignments efficiently and effectively, and they also want to engage with the course. But the problem is that they just couldn't access the information since the course wasn't accessibly set up or designed. So some good solutions would just be to improve the accessibility of the course and also present the content in a wide variety of formats, which I will get into. All right, so experiences with D2L really depend on the different assistive technologies that students use. So one assistive technology that may work very well for another student may not work so well for a different student. So it really all depends on the technology. And remember that no single solution will work for everyone. The effectiveness of an assistive technology in D2L will depend on a couple different things. Such as if a thing is keyboard compatible or if it's mouse dependent. If something is keyboard compatible, then that's great for accessibility purposes. But if it's mouse dependent, then there will definitely be some issues. Content readability is also important, as you heard Jess talk about in the labeling question. It was hard to read the diagram, so it's important to have readable materials that are clear and legible. Also, methods of answer input as well are key. Also, navigation to the necessary materials. As you saw, there was a PDF that Jess was trying to access, but had problems doing that material. So it's important that the resource is accessible and being able to be used by assistive technology. Also, a big point here with time constraints. If someone is using a keyboard, for instance, to navigate through an assessment or a quiz, that's going to take them more time compared to, say, using a mouse, like typical. So those time constraints are going to really affect someone's ability to take an assessment if there's a time limit on it. So then some best practices for quizzes in D2L are including accessible questions, which you can see up here include multiple choice and fill in the blank. But other questions also may be accessible depending on their implementation. So for instance, a matching question may be accessible if it has 5 options instead of 25, as you saw in the quiz. So it's just about the way it's implemented and incorporated. The testing environment settings as well are key to hone in on. Clear instructions, for example, are very good for students to just understand like what's going on here. What do I need to do on this assessment? And so that is a important one there. And then also flexible time limits and attempts. As you see here in the screenshot, you can change a student's accommodations within D2L, which is really nice. You can modify their time limits as well. So it's great to get that flexibility in there. Also, grouping of similar question types is important in order for just the assessment to be well organized, and also for students with assistive technologies to easily navigate through that and not be thrown off by different structures and having to go back and forth between different things. All right, so a few questions to keep in mind while designing any assessment. One of them is, are there any specific benefits to this question type being used? So it's basically asking yourself, does this particular question type help my students achieve an objective or a goal that I want them to do, or if I can answer this question in basically a more accessible format. That plays into this first question here as well. So like if you have a matching question, for instance, or like a drag and drop in a third party thing, you can ask, can I ask this as a multiple choice or a true false question and still get the same outcome and goal? But perhaps the most important question here is this third one, which is, will all users have an equitable and fair experience? So that relates to thinking about any unintended frustrations that may arise out of utilizing assistive technology. And to ensure this equitable experience most effectively, that is where UDL comes in, or Universal Design for Learning. That is a big part of having an equitable experience. UDL is something that is way too large and complex to talk about in the time we have today. But the big thing about it is that it embraces the idea of having equal learning opportunities for students regardless of their ability, regardless of their background, or regardless of their culture and the knowledge they bring in. Another big cornerstone of it is the idea of having flexibility in courses, having flexible ways of having students being motivated by the material. So having different ways to motivate students, having different ways that material is represented and shown to students, whether that's an HTML page on D2L, whether that's a fun video you find online or a PowerPoint presentation. It's important to have all those different ways of representation. And also having flexible ways that students can express themselves and express their knowledge and really engage and interact with the material. That flexibility is offered well by having flexible response formats. So for instance, you can have an external Word or a Google document that you can have students download and then type their question answers into. This is especially handy if, say, you have let's say a matching question that requires students, okay, you have to put things into two different categories. Well, in the document, you can just have a column and then another column, and then students can put the terms into the respective categories. So that really allows a good flexibility in the ways that students can respond to things. If you want stuff that's a little more complex, fillable PDF would be a good way to go. You can have fill in the blanks, so like a fillable form field. I think it's down there on the bottom of that screenshot there. Also having a different choice selection, as you see with the different circular radio buttons there. And this is something that either Kyle or myself can help you out with as instructional technology and accessibility coordinators, since PDFs can be tricky to work with. In D2L, in terms of flexibility, you can incorporate third-party questions into a quiz. So let's say you use a textbook website or publisher. You can, and then it has like a drag and drop question. You can move that question into the quiz, but you can change the format to something more accessible, like a fill in the blank or MCQ or a matching. So there's a lot of adaptability in there. And also in D2L, you can have students record themselves talking or have them record a video in order to have them respond to a question, which is really nice, not only for some students with disabilities, but also for students who just like expressing themselves more that way. The students may feel just more comfortable speaking things out rather than writing or like doing a paper. So it's great to have that flexibility built in within D2L, and flexibility is really a huge part of UDL. So on to Kyle.
And I'm gonna swap spots with you.
Okay.
Just stand.
So one way that you can incorporate that UDL piece is through the use of module guides. I think when we look at UDL, sometimes from the outside, it gets looked at as, well, I gotta make all of these things and all of these different activities for students, and that's typically not what UDL is. Like Ryan said, that could be a workshop in itself, but through the use of module guides, it kind of organizes your content a little bit nicer so that you can describe what things might be, the alternative formats that students might be able to either use for how they're accessing information or use for how they're submitting their work. So instead of just putting it into a list in D2L and having all of these things listed and students don't know if this is this an alternative format or is this what I'm actually supposed to be clicking on, A module guide allows you to actually go in there, put some text in and describe like, hey, this link, if you want to submit it this way, you'd be able to submit it here by using the Word doc. Jack mentioned that submitting Word documents is typically easier for him to do than inputting things through third-party sites. So that might be an opportunity where you could provide something for activity one. Maybe you have activity one as if you want to complete it through the third-party tool, great, complete it through the third-party tool, or right below it, still in activity one would be, or you can submit your responses through this link. So that piece of a module guide just gives you more flexibility and kind of makes it clearer for students that this is something that all students benefit from. It's not just students with assistive technology, students with assistive technologies would benefit from this, but this is again, that UDL piece that all students can benefit from. If you are interested in having a module guide added to your course, anyone in distance learning would be happy to facilitate that process. Just contact distance learning and we can get you module guides added. These things, this is just an example. Shout out Tammy for letting me steal this from her course, but this is just an example of what it would look like. There's different kind of layouts and formats that you can use. You don't have to necessarily use the different sections that are put in here. It can be flexible with what you need for your course. Not every course is the same. So again, that module guide piece kind of ties in UDL nicely so that you can explain how students can either submit an additional format, or that's a great place to provide additional formats. Some of those might be in PDF, some of those might be through the third-party tool, some of those might be in Word documents, but the whole option piece there is what a lot of students would benefit from. The other piece that Jess had brought up in her demonstration and through the course that you guys have access to was PDFs. PDFs are frequently used in courses as like supplemental or additional reading materials. Not every PDF is instantly accessible. They can be accessible. We can use them to make them accessible for assistive technologies, but it needs to be scanned and tagged. And so I'm going to kind of explain what those two things are. The first piece here of scanning a document, there are tools that Adobe Acrobat will use, and not everybody we don't have a campus license for Adobe Acrobat Pro, which is where you can add these tags that I'll talk about here in a little bit, which is another service that Ryan and I would be able to provide. If you ever want a PDF that's in your course, if you just want it checked to make sure that it has tags, or if those tags have been done correctly, that is a service that we'd be more than happy to connect with you on and make sure that those PDFs are in fact accessible. Because even though they're in the course, it doesn't guarantee that they're accessible. So on the left here, again, this is Adobe Acrobat Pro. So if you open it up in Reader, you likely don't have access to the accessibility tabs that are off to the side here. The first one here is what Jess opened up the first time, and she was trying to use Doc Reader, which is in the Read Speaker tool that's within D2L. So sometimes those get embedded right into D2L pages and they haven't had any scan or any tagging done to them. Hence why when she clicked on that button the first time, it said, I can't identify any content within this. That's not going to be helpful for students that rely on the Read Speaker or the Doc Reader. It's especially not going to be helpful for students that rely on screen reading technology. One of those things was JAWS, which was one of the assistive technologies that Katrina had gone through. Students who are blind use JAWS not only to have their content announced to them, but also to navigate through the structure of a document as well as any online materials. So if these tags aren't added, not only will that content not be read, they're not going to know when they're coming across certain types of content. We know as a sighted user, when you're coming into a document, this is the title of that document, or I'm going into a list of items, or I'm entering a table. If you're tabbing through or using your keyboard and you're using JAWS, you don't always know when new content type has been entered. And so that's why these tags are important. So the one on the left here is, again, no tags have been added. So as somebody who's either using the Doc Reader or using JAWS, they come across this, nothing is going to be announced to them. What this essentially reads is just a scanned image. It's just one picture. It doesn't identify any of these individual characters. What will happen if you've scanned and you've used the auto tag feature, which I'll show a demonstration of here in just a second. If you have done that auto tagging feature and it's been scanned, it now will add these accessibility tags. So it'll tell a person using JAWS that as I'm tabbing through that, this is a title or I'm entering a list. It'll also announce the content, but now it lets them know more about the structure of that document and the type of content that they're going to interact with. So as you can see, kind of, it shows that there's these outlines of things that have now been tagged that is showing that it would in fact get announced or identified by a screen reader. So I'm gonna show kind of an example that I'll walk through here. The first one is going to show again how JAWS, so this is a screen reader, it's a little bit different than just the text to speech.
HSBS.
So there's no tags added. This would be JAWS announcing a
Blank.
document with no tags.
Blank.
And it's just announcing blank. So again, it's just announcing that or identifying that as a scanned image. It's not reading those individual characters. In Adobe Acrobat Pro, you can go through an accessibility feature. You can have the document auto tagged. Just like any AI tool, which is what this kind of is, it uses OCR, which is optical character recognition. When it scans it, it's going to identify the letters. It's also going to identify the tags that thinks that those letters and that those groups of words belong to. It's not always 100% accurate, so that's why Ryan and I's services, even if the document is tagged, sometimes those documents need to be reviewed to make sure that those things are tagged correctly so that it makes the structure make sense for someone that, again, is using JAWS, so that it's not announcing, you know, something down here as being a title. It's not, it's giving those things or the structure to that document some accuracy. So the second piece here then is.
What differences between high school and college disability services? There is no special education at the college level. Educational rights cover education. College students have civil rights, but those are not education.
So you'll hear it announce it's entering a list.
Required list of 10 items. Bullet. Make all programs and services physical left parent accessible to all students.
Okay, so in that last part, what it was showing you that it was entering a list. I kind of started skipping through it, but in the first example, when that document had no scan, no tags, even for JAWS as well as for the doc reader that Jess was using, it's not going to announce anything. Once the tags have been added, it now can identify the text that's been in there as well as the type of text that's being put into, or the type of text that the JAWS screen reader is starting to interact with. It announced now entering list as soon as those bullet pointed items were being shown. For a sighted user, again, we see the bullet points that are going into that list. For someone using JAWS, it just announces and lets them know that, hey, you're entering a document that has somewhat of a new structure to it. Let's see if we can get to the next one. So the next piece here is kind of using D2L, and there's a lot of benefits to using D2L as opposed to especially using third-party tools. I know that sometimes the content that's within third-party tools is great. I know that sometimes that content's already built for you, but there are a lot of advantages to moving some of that content into D2L. The first is by the use of ReadSpeaker. If you're building HTML pages and you're putting your content into HTML pages, which would be like what Jess showed in her demonstration of the more accessible version. If you're building your content within those pages, ReadSpeaker is automatically going to work for you. So we don't have to go through the tagging process of everything. If that content's being built within those HTML pages, any user that's coming across that can use the ReadSpeaker functionality. You don't have to worry about, again, having it tagged. The second thing is that if you're building in D2L, there's a little, there's a little eye with the check next to it in your toolbar up at the top. What that allows you to do is have your content checked for accessibility. So if you're creating something, you don't know, hey, is what I just put in there, maybe there's an image that you put in there, maybe there's a table that's been put into your content that you're building within an HTML page. If you want those things checked for accessibility, that accessibility checker will go through and it will manually do a check for you. Now, again, just like with the scanning, it's not 100% perfect. There might be some things that it doesn't pick up that someone else might be able to identify, but it's a great starting tool and it's a better option, I think, than what some publishing companies maybe get passed off to students. So the next one Ryan talked about was accommodations. You have the accommodations feature. So through quizzes or some exams that you might be putting in through D2L, you have some flexibility with how many attempts students might have, as well as the amount of time that they have to take that quiz. That's not always offered in third-party tools. The next one is your HTML editor toolbar. So that's kind of what you're looking at here. If I build content within an HTML page, it doesn't matter if you're doing it for an HTML page, it doesn't matter if you're doing it for a quiz, an announcement, it could be through a discussion post. You have access to this HTML editor toolbar. As long as you're using the buttons within that HTML editor toolbar, it's doing all of the tagging for you. So when we looked at the the Adobe Acrobat piece, and there was the untagged, and then there was the tagged version of it. If you are clicking on these buttons and you are using the buttons within that toolbar, it's automatically adding those accessibility tags for somebody that might be using a screen reader with your content. So like this piece up here, I went and as I was building it, I identified that, I highlighted it up in the toolbar up there for heading 1. I highlighted it, made sure it was a heading 1. It's done all the fancy schmancy coding in the background to now identify through that screen reading software that this would be a heading 1, so it makes it a little bit easier for screen reader users to navigate through that content. So if you're building your own content in D2L, as long as you're using that HTML editor toolbar, you're adding some accessible code that can be used by assistive technologies. The next thing, which is another UDL piece, is it's just easier for students to navigate. If it's all in one spot and I'm not clicking and going out, as we saw with Jack's demonstration too, when he was taking the quiz and had to leave the site and then now navigate back, that's a little bit of time that's taking to move from one to the other. You're also relying on that site not having any issues. Maybe there's a problem with the way that it's loading or the access to that website. If you don't have to do that, you eliminate that. Now it's made it a lot more accessible, again, not just for assistive technology, but for all students. If everything is just kind of housed in D2L, it's a little bit easier to navigate to that content. The next thing is gradebook. You don't have to worry about my stuff or my quizzes that I put in Macmillan Learning isn't copying over to my stuff in D2L. If it's in D2L and you've taken a quiz in D2L, it's going to go straight into your gradebook. You don't have to worry about that stuff copying over from one to the other. And then the last thing, kind of similar, but copying content, that's more of like you taking a course shell and moving it over to a next semester. I don't have to worry about the publishing company has changed their whatever in this for this year, and now I've got to adjust some of the assignments that I'm doing. If you're creating the content, you've developed content, you know what you want to use for the next semester. It's just a simple copy over to next semester. You don't have to worry about any updates that they've been doing. You also don't have to worry about updating the codes that students might need, the redemption codes or things like that to get into any of those third-party tools. So lots of benefits for building your content within D2L. So just I know there was kind of a lot to go through here, but just to wrap up and some kind of final thoughts. The first thing is that, as you've seen with what kind of Katrina went through at the start, there's a lot of different assistive technologies that are out there. Those different assistive technologies are going to interact with content differently. There are best practices that you can follow to sort of check a lot of the boxes for those assistive technologies, but sometimes it's kind of dependent on the content and the assistive technology as well as the preference of the user. So it's good to have those conversations, to seek feedback from students too, and maybe what works best for one student, even though it's the same assistive technology, just like any student in a classroom might not necessarily work best for another. So just understanding that those different assistive technologies are going to interact with your content a little bit differently. The next thing is related to quiz questions, just evaluating if those quiz questions are necessary for assessing the objectives that you want them to assess. If there's an objective that asks them to sort things out and you think that that is the question type that they need, that's great. That's when we then default to, okay, is there an accessible format though that we can maybe rework that towards? Maybe there's a Google Doc or a Microsoft Word file where we just have them type out the list and they've sorted it that way. It doesn't necessarily have to be the drag and drop functionality, as long as I'm assessing the fact that they've listed all of these things in these two categories and sorted them out. That would kind of be a way of you making that in an accessible format for students. And again, the module guides can provide some flexibility with how you provide those alternative formats. PDFs are going to have proper tagging. There are ways where you can have it auto tagged, but just because it's been auto tagged doesn't guarantee that the correct tags have been identified. This is a service that, again, Ryan and I would be more than happy to work with you on. If you do have PDFs, send them our way. We can either get them scanned and get them tagged or check the tags that might already be there just to make sure that they are, in fact, accessible for all users. Next, there are a ton of benefits that come with developing your content within D2L, as long as we're following some of those things, like maybe not putting 25 matching questions in there. Another one that that Jess had talked about too was the labeling questions in your quiz that you had. There was the picture, that picture could not be resized, and there was text that you had to read that was kind of teeny tiny. It'd be nice if it was a resizing option, or you made something that the image that you provided was large enough where somebody could zoom in on it without distorting the image and things are clearly labeled. So there's a lot of ways that D2L can support accessibility through the use of HTML editor toolbars and creating that content that way, as well as accessibility checkers and some of the tools like Read Speaker. The final piece here is accessibility that we have talked about before is sort of a moving target. And there's, again, not just a one size fits all solution to everything. We are more than happy to work with you on creating things that are accessible. If you have questions about things, you know, we work with faculty members frequently about, I just want to have this checked for accessibility, or I think I can use this. There was one where somebody was submitting assignments one way. We tried to do it a little bit differently, and it turned out that he liked the way that we had changed it to for all students, not just for the one student that needed that remediation piece. So if there are any questions that you have about accessibility, if you want anything checked, we are more than happy to help you through that process. Our last piece then that we had was just a little bit of question and answers. If anybody has questions, otherwise I can put our contact information.
Yeah, did you have something you'd like to say?
You had more. Say, like where they picked up. Oh, but can you, is it good? I mean, you had more in your demo, is that what you said?
In the video demo, you want to go back? I can go back. Take some time.
You had more to say about it? Or another video?
I think at the end, are you talking about the draft or the assignment, submitting an assignment? Okay, I think there was maybe a piece at the end here.
Sorry.
So I think if I remember, you also demoed how to submit like a Word file.
Okay, so now
Yeah.
we're going to show how.
This
Jackson
video is me
an
turning in an
into
assignment
D2L.
on D2L.
All right, so this would be Jack turning in an assignment on D2L. So again, that piece of flexible formats or alternative formats.
Yeah, having more than one way to submit something.
So he's navigating through his computer to select the appropriate document to upload.
This is the external document stuff I was talking about earlier.
And the add a file box is opened up on D2L right now. And then he's clicking on the submit button in the assignment tab in D2L.
Microsoft Word documents are one of the easiest types of file for me to turn into assignment. I am turning in a set of chapter notes for my Introduction to Group Processes class. Faculty, any Microsoft Office document and Google document I can easily open and edit, but sometimes it is really hard for me to edit PDFs. So if it has to be a PDF, please make sure that students are able to edit it easily. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me talk about the logistics of the way I use assistive technology to help me be successful in college.
Thanks, Jack.
And that fillable piece again was one that Ryan had mentioned about, I think so, about having form fields or having text boxes added too. So if there is a PDF that you're using and you want people to respond to it, again, that's something that you could reach out to us. We can add those form fields, we can add those text boxes to add that piece for accessibility so that it would make it a little bit easier for submitting. I will skip forward then. If there aren't any questions, this is it, Jack. Yeah.
One question I'll ask if I can for Jess and Jack both, but certainly feel free to speak to it also, Katrina, Kyle and Ryan, is I'm struck by when you shared like just the frustrations of navigating the PDF for both of you and like the preference for Word documents. And I'm thinking about ways to kind of share that experience with faculty who may not already know like that frustration. And so I guess the question I'm thinking about is, are there questions that you would encourage or that you would like faculty to ask you to learn about that experience? Like, what are ways, because I imagine that could be difficult to just bring that up with a faculty member of, hey, this is very frustrating right now, the way this is a PDF. So in what ways could faculty at the beginning of a course or at some point in the course, like learn about that experience from you? That makes sense, the question.
Yeah, so normally, so with like Liddy Hope, she always asks me at the beginning of the course, like, hey, does this work for you? And I'm like, and I'll go and check it out and I'm like, yeah or no, and then she'll be like, okay, I'll fix it, or great, that works.
I think too, that just that piece, and I don't want to speak on your behalf, but I think the piece of having the flexible formats, and if you had choice between what it is that you're selecting through, you might be able to stumble across the one that is best suited for you, and so that alleviates needing to even ask that question, so.
And Jack is composing his response right now.
It would be helpful for instructors to ask me what types of files are easiest.
Great question, Tyler.
That's helpful. I appreciate like the specificity of those questions from both of you, like how practical that is. So thank you both very much. That's really helpful.
Can I ask, so if a faculty member or a staff member in a department that's trying to just improve accessibility in their class or with documents in their that are coming out of their department, that sort of thing, and it's kind of new to all of this, like where's the best place to start to sort of get the most like sort of bang for your buck, for lack of a better word? Like where are, you know, is it with you know, focusing on like proper tagging and like headings for documents to make sure that screen readers can pick them up you know, appropriately? Or, you know, where's a good place to start for somebody who's sort of new to this and wanting to make sure that like they're being, you know, the actions that they take have the most impact possible to sort of get the ball rolling?
Well, that's a great segue
Yes.
into our e-talent. There's an offering that we have this spring that I think that we put a link down in the resources, which I forgot to mention in that course that you're in. There's a link to a bunch of resources that you can access. But one of those offerings that we are doing is called Getting Started with Accessibility, sort of that same framework of there's a lot to get through. And again, identifying what are the pieces that I can get started with that are going to have that sort of instant impact. It might not solve all problems, but it kind of gets you started, gets the ball rolling.
So
So, but yeah, that is an offering in this part.
I definitely recommend that for anyone who's just getting started with these things and really becoming aware of accessibility in their courses. So yeah, there's 2 different sessions coming up next month. Yeah.
I'm not a plant, I promise.
Jess, would you like to explain a little bit more about your experience when you were taking the biology course and it had some images? What was helpful when the instructor composed the questions?
So what helped with that is it was in D2L, first of all. So they decided like what was being labeled in the question, but also with questions that needed labeling, like a diagram, they would like put a description in the question, like the arrow is pointing to the structure that is like the main functioning of like the nucleus or like the powerhouse of the nucleus. So then I was like, oh, I know what that is. So it's just like more descriptors like that. And I would advise to stay away from color. So it's like, that's the orange structure because you don't know if somebody's like colorblind. So that like description might not help them.
Chuck?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Kyle and Ryan for advising me on my course. I'm getting a lot of help right now with changing my videos to make them readable because I have a student who's hearing impaired. And I have short videos, 10-minute videos, 5-minute videos that take half an hour to fix. And I have 1-hour ones that take hours. And if you count how many times I say like and in the videos, I mean, I mean, just what did I just said? What did I just say now? It's ridiculous. So it's changing my way of speaking. I'm making videos shorter from now on. And I don't know if you wanted to chime in on there, but it's also making me realize that the reading, I mean, the closed captions for the YouTube is an unused, untapped tool that teachers could use. Because sometimes I don't even understand what I'm saying. I have to go back and, oh, epidermis, okay. I said hypodermis, I said the wrong thing. It's incredible and there's so many resources out there. And even where the closed captions are, they're often right where what I'm pointing to. So I was asking if there's a way to move the closed captions up. I'm sure YouTube will invent that in a few weeks already. So whatever I'm pointing to needs to be not at the bottom of the screen, but higher up. There's just so much. So I can't wait for that presentation you guys are doing.
Yeah, that's really awesome. You're becoming more aware about these practices. I've seen it firsthand. It's really been really great. So awesome.
Thanks. Thanks
And
for
there is a
helping.
way, if you hold down on that caption text, you can move it to a different part of the
Oh, really?
video screen. So if that caption is blocking, something that you're
Mhm.
demonstrating, biology instructor, you're demonstrating quite a bit, you can always move it around on the screen. So it's
Okay.
also a really cool feature when you're using the captions, you have the transcript. So if somebody wants to do a search and find, when we're talking about, a specific theory, or when you're talking about a specific term, the student can type in the search bar of the transcript for that specific term and then can fast forward to that segment of the lecture recording. So it kind of helps with the studying piece, helps save some time. That way the student's like, oh, I got the first 10 minutes of the lecture video. I don't need to listen to that again, but I really want to hear when the instructor is talking about X, Y, and Z.
We've got a question online. Tammy, go ahead and unmute if you want. You can ask your question.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, really not a question. I just want to say that this has been an outstanding presentation. And I am so happy as a longtime advocate for creating accessible content. I'm so happy to have Kyle and Ryan joining our team doing this, this very important work. I want to thank the students who are sharing their experiences. That's so beneficial to us as we're trying to make content available for our students. And of course, Katrina, I'm always appreciative of the good work you've been doing for a very long time. So I'm sitting here clapping. I know you all can't see me, but thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
I think that's all we had online.
All right.
Thank you all very, very much again.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
That was
Thank you so
wonderful.
much, guys.
Yeah, very good, very, very good.
Thank you all for coming today. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy your weekend.
Yeah.
Okay, go.